Hey, Robby Gallaty here. I want to thank you for joining us for the Growing Up Challenge, Week 7, Chapter 5 of the Growing Up book. And this is one of my favorite chapters in the book. And I really put it in here right in the center to challenge you to develop a prayer life, a healthy prayer life. You know, for years, I knew I should pray, but I knew rote prayers. I knew how to pray formal prayers. I didn't know how to have an intimate prayer life with God. And so we're studying communication, knocking on heaven's door. And I've asked my good friend, Dave Wiley. Dave is our community outreach director here at Brainerd. He's in the prisons and the projects as he goes into the community and he makes disciples in those contexts, those difficult contexts of making disciples. And I've asked him to join me. Dave, why don't you share, not only from our experience together, but just experiences of your own groups over the past few years. Share with me, what are some things you've learned about prayer and the importance of prayer in the life of a discipleship group? Can you share some of those?
Yeah, of course. I think in my personal groups, it's been really good. If you can divide up, if you've got a big group, it's a good idea to kind of divide up. Maybe divide, if you've got 4, you two pray together, you two pray together. Of course, you're going to pray as a group, but even to communicate outside the group and send text, I get a text message, hey man, I'm praying for you today, or a tweet, praying for Dave today, or something like that. It's a big encouragement, but even beyond that, to know that if I'm going and I'm serving in a certain area, that I can shout at my guys and say, hey man, listen, I need your prayers today. And I can depend on knowing I got that,
That's huge, yeah.
And the prison system, as we've worked in there and we're making disciples there too, it's a big deal because these guys, for them, it empowers them. It gives them the opportunity to be involved. So if we're, for instance, maybe I've been in North Africa, I've been in a mission field somewhere. Well, these guys own being able to pray. In a sense, for them, they're with me there through prayer. And I can depend on that and be strong because I know these guys back here in this prison are praying for me. Then when I get back, the first thing they want to know is what happened. We've been praying, we've been expecting. What happened?
Yeah, that's huge. And you touched on something really interesting, and that is the importance of setting up a prayer chain or a prayer group. In our discipleship groups, we always set up group text or group emails or phone conversations. We'll call on the phone and do a 3-way or a 4-way prayer time as a group. And I've done this for years. And that is so rich in the life of a discipleship group. Also, just want to challenge you. There have been times when guys have come in and they have just had burdens on them in their lives. And basically, we just spent the whole time in prayer. You want to radically change your group dynamic, put the week aside and just pray for the entire hour or hour and a half. And that's really a neat time. I remember teaching on prayer in one of my discipleship groups. And we were talking about providential prayer. The question of, okay, if God's providential and God controls all things, but he commands us to pray, why pray? If God's in control, why do we pray? And we were wrestling with, and I don't have an answer for that. That's a whole nother message at a different time. But anyway, now that I have you thinking. But basically, what I did is I had an opportunity to go down to preach in a prison to share my testimony. And I decided to do it on our discipleship group night, and I took the guys with me. We went down to the prison. They were nervous. I don't care how tough you are. When you go into a prison and they lock that door behind you, you get a little nervous. And so we're in there. I've got 3 guys with me and myself. And I share the gospel, share my testimony, and in the prison, it was like a corridor. They had 2 sections for men, 1 section for women, and the only thing dividing the prisoners from us was a yellow painted line on the ground. I mean, that was it. And so it was kind of nerve-wracking, if you can imagine. And nobody really seemed like they were into the message, so I gave the invitation. I said, if anyone's here and they want to respond to the gospel and you need prayer, would you step to the yellow line? And it was almost like a light switch went off, and people started responding for prayer. And I looked at the chaplain and I said, "Can we go in?" And he said, "In the prison?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Sure." So I looked at the guys and I said, "Guys, why don't you come in with me?" And they said, "Us?" And I said, "Yeah, you." And so they said, "What do we do?" I said, "Just pray. Just divide up and pray." And at first they were kind of nervous. And at the end of the time, I never forget, I look over. I see one of the guys praying with 2 or 3 men. I see another guy praying with 2 or 3 men. I see people weeping in prayer. We got back in the truck and we were driving home. And those guys looked at me, and they were fired up, as you can imagine. And they looked at me and they said, "Robby, we learned more about prayer in that past 30 minutes than you could have ever taught us in a theology book." And I realized it's important. Just a quick point here. it's important to apply theology. It's important to apply what we know, right? It's not just learning it, but applying what we know. Tell us how they can apply just prayer, maybe praying for friends or family members.
Well, I think you made a good point, too. Matthew chapter 6, Jesus says, God already knows what you need before you ask, so pray like this. You know what I mean? So pray like this.
Yeah.
I think it was Brendan Manning that said that it's like climbing in your Father's lap. I think that's a great way. Like if you go into prayer looking at how can I get God to do what I want him to do all the time, then yeah, you're going to feel defeated at times, and yeah, you're going to wonder sovereignty and all that mess. But if you go to prayer in how can I sit in my Father's lap, how can I spend some time with him, that changes the picture. But I would encourage you, the cool thing about prayer is you can put it to the test. So I would encourage you, think of 3 people maybe, identify them, begin to put them in your head and start to pray, God, give me a chance to sit down with these people. Give me a chance, bring them into my life. Give me a chance, open a door where I can share my faith with them, where I can take them to lunch, and really push that, commit to praying for it. And I think you'd be surprised. You may get a phone call out of the blue. Hey, listen, can we talk? Or something like that.
Yeah, and I've done this in the past, and it's amazing how God will transform hardened hearts, people you think are far from the gospel, and bring them unto himself. Look forward to seeing you next week. One of my favorite scriptures in all of the Bible you'll begin to memorize this week. God bless you. See you next time.